Hello, welcome to Issues and Ideas. I'm Chris DeBello. Today we begin with a lecture on how to crash and burn in the full view of the public while destroying any respect you might have possibly possessed. Our guest lecturer, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi.
To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. Attorney General Bondi, you apologized to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
Congresswoman, you sat before Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General Bondi,
no, can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question that I would like you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the answer.
Time.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't
a
she
question.
ask Merrick Garland this?
I am reclaiming my time, and when I
will
reclaim
continue
my
to
time,
answer.
it is
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady has reclaimed her
I'm not going
time.
to get in the gutter for her theatric.
How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First, you showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer the
theatrics are
question
ridiculous.
the way I asked it.
Chairman Jordan, I'm not going to get in the gutter with these people, but I'm going to answer the question.
How many have you indicted?
Again, the time belongs to
Reclaiming my time.
The time belongs.
I think it's very interesting.
Reclaiming my time.
I think it's very interesting.
And you can
when
reclaim
he
your
talks
time,
about they
reclaiming my time,
indicted,
Mr.
the
Chairman.
president said they indicted him twice.
Mr. Chairman, please
They
stop the
sure
clock
did.
and stop the clock and restore his time.
Okay, here we go with these
Committee will be in order.
theatrics.
The time belongs to the gentleman from New York. We will give you a few more seconds. We will do that. But when you ask a question, the witness gets to answer. You may not like the answer, but she gets to answer.
The question was, how many of Epstein's...
They don't like the answer, Chairman,
Reclaiming my time.
because it's honest. So he asked a 4-minute question.
Restore 45
and
seconds
I
to
am
Mr. Nadler,
going
please,
to
Mr. Chairman.
Answer.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch. Not on our time. No way. And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me
Yeah, I
anything,
did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
Lawyer, not even a lawyer. First, he brought up the president saying they indicted me twice. They sure did. They tried to impeach him twice. And you, Mr. Nadler, were one of the leads on the impeachment. I was on the other side. I lived that with you. During impeachment, you said the president conspired, sought foreign interference in the 2016 election. Robert Mueller found no evidence, none, of foreign interference in 2016. Have you apologized to President Trump? Have you apologized to President Trump, all of you who participated in those impeachment hearings against Donald Trump? You all should be apologizing. You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it. You know, all they want to do, the American people need to know this. They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million. And Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them ask Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
Committee will be in order.
May I answer?
Attorney General can respond.
I find it interesting that she keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. And if they could maintain their composure, this isn't a circus, this is a hearing.
That was, of course, in this past week as Bondi testified before a House committee hearing while playing really for an audience of one, which would be, of course, Donald Trump. While Bondi's hysterics were certainly annoying, what was truly sickening was how Bondi refused to even look at the Epstein survivors who were seated just a couple of rows behind her. Now, if you had just listened and watched the whole thing unfold, you no doubt caught significant pauses between when Bondi was asked a question when she started her response. That wasn't because she was gathering her thoughts or collecting her words. It was because she was looking through the notebooks she had spread out in front of her to find the script page of name-calling, snarky remarks to fire back with, since apparently Bondi, when left to herself, couldn't spontaneously come up with a fart after a baked bean banquet. Obvious intent and goal for Bondi was to put out the fire, that is, the Epstein files, and protect Donald Trump. However, once again, Bondi boldly displayed her total, complete incompetence by actually pouring more gas on the fire that she was hoping to put out. All right, I've said my piece about the politics we saw this past week with the Epstein files. Now let's widen the view with an examination of what this all means for not just the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, but really all victims of trafficking as well as abuse, who hope that someone is going to hear them and respond in a way that rescues and hopefully starts to heal them. To do that, we welcome Policy and Education Manager with the organization World Without Exploitation, Dahlia Edidin Locke. How are you today, Dahlia?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Well, good to have you here to, again, get away from the politics and get to the humanity side of this issue. Humanity,
Absolutely.
which, as we saw at the hearing, is sorely lacking, but we do have hope. WorldWithoutExploitation.org. Learn more about Dahlia's organization, the work they do, and we'll get into some of that, too, along with their upcoming conference in June. I gave my review or response or analysis of Pam Bondi this past week. I want to give you equal time from your side of knowledge and awareness. What did you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was actually in the room of the hearing with the survivors just a few days ago, and it was pretty shocking and very frustrating, not only as an advocate for survivors of sex trafficking, but also to be there with the survivors and see how repeatedly disrespected they were by Attorney General Pam Bondi, who refused to turn around and look at them, to acknowledge them, despite Congresspeople giving her multiple opportunities to do so. So I found the whole ordeal to be very disrespectful. She attempted to politicize the horrific experiences of the victims by making it an issue of challenging, President Trump instead of prioritizing the humanity of the victims and the harm that was done to them. So it was very frustrating, but I think for the survivors, it actually brought them some clarity, right? So they could really understand what is going through Pam Bondi's head and why they are not receiving the appropriate attention that they deserve.
I think if social media responses as any measurement, for all the hopes I'm sure that the Trump administration had of tampering down the heat or putting out the fire of the Epstein files, their total dropping of any kind of common sense and decency, it just escalated and poured gas on the fire. This isn't going away.
Absolutely, yeah. We've been seeing clips from Congresswoman Crockett, from Congresswoman Balint, for example, and Goldman going absolutely viral as they were, laying bare for the world to see how incompetent the Attorney General is and how little care she has for prioritizing justice for the survivors and accountability for the perpetrators.
And for you listening, I didn't have time to include this in the clips that we played before, but was going back further in time a few months ago. I think it was the late summer when a group of survivors were in front of the Capitol building trying to urge Congress to pass the Epstein File Act. And Donald Trump's response was, and I'm not paraphrasing, he called their cause a hoax, quote unquote.
That's right.
So it just
right.
shows what we're working with here. What is the importance? I mean, people might be thinking, and this is something I've done a lot of work with and talking here and work off the show too, but with victims of domestic violence, and people that don't understand say, well, just move on, get over it is the common phrase. What's the importance for the victims of a full and complete release of the Epstein files?
Yeah, this is really critical for a few reasons. The first is that the survivors want to see the perpetrators of these crimes to be held accountable. And the only way to do that, because it seems like DOJ is not willing to actually move forward with investigations of the many credible leads we've seen from, some of the files that have been released. So for the survivors, releasing all of the files could bring about accountability for those who have perpetrated harm against them. So that's the first reason why it's really important. The second is that it's really invalidating, right, and harmful for this mass cover-up that's going on to happen to survivors. Because I'll give you one example. One survivor that we work with publicly, her name is Jess Michaels, said that in the files that have been released, she has not been able to find her 302 form. Now, that's an official report used by FBI agents to summarize witness interviews. Now, Jess and all of the other survivors that were at Pam Bondi's hearing said that they have tried repeatedly to meet with this administration's DOJ, but they all did come forward to try to report to the FBI when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested, and yet some of them still can't find the files that validate the fact that they did come forward, that they did try to report, try to get justice for what they experienced. So it's really kind of a maddening experience to kind of be gaslit into thinking that their experiences were not valid, that they didn't happen, that they don't deserve justice. So that's why it's so critical for all of the files to be released.
And it's not like Bondi's DOJ is understaffed like so many other Trump administration agencies. Over 500 lawyers. That was one of the questions that she avoided, actually. You have 500 attorneys, Secretary Bondi, Attorney General Bondi. Why did they make so many mistakes of not redacting information about the victims and redacting information to protect those who perpetrated the crimes?
Yeah. No, that's a critical question. And I honestly think that the idea that they are just understaffed is really not a legitimate excuse, right? Because exactly of what you just said, Chris, that we are seeing that the names of the perpetrators and potential co-conspirators and sex buyers are being redacted. They are purposefully being protected by the attorneys who are going through the redactions. At whose order, right, we don't exactly know, while the identifying information of survivors is being exposed. So what it feels like to us and the survivors at large is that this is very intentional, and this is meant to frighten and intimidate them into stopping their advocacy. But what we've heard from them is that it's only emboldening them further and making them want to fight harder.
And I think Bondi made it crystal clear who she's working for, and it's not the cause of the victims or to fight crime as a top priority, not even close. We're talking with Dahlia Edidin Locke, who is Policy and Education Manager with World Without Exploitation. Website is worldwithoutexploitation.org. We have a link at our homepage as well. And you are listening to Issues and Ideas. What is World Without Exploitation doing to bring about a full file release? Because I think we all thought, and if you look at the Jeffrey Epstein Files Act, as far as federal legislation goes, it's brief, 7 pages. It can't be any more clear. When this becomes law, DOJ has 30 days to put up or explain why. And they have failed the ball. They dropped the ball. They failed to comply. The Pam Bondi DOJ is currently breaking the law. You can't classify it any other way but that.
That's absolutely right. They are. So what World Without Exploitation has been doing is working with the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to organize them and to get them in front of government officials and politicians to strategize about how we can put pressure on the DOJ, on the Attorney General, and on this current administration that's clearly perpetrating a cover-up of these crimes. So we're trying to organize politically to put pressure to release all of the files, but we've also actually recently worked with Senator Schumer of New York and Congresswoman Ledger Fernandez of New Mexico to introduce Virginia's law, which would end the statute of limitations for sex trafficking victims at the federal level. So this would enable more trafficking victims, including some of the survivors, to go after their perpetrators and receive justice. So we're trying different avenues here, but we've definitely got a long road ahead, but we're ready for it.
It sounds very similar to what the victims of sexual abuse and rape by priests did, and states responded by extending the statute of limitations for those victims to go after the Catholic Church, as we've seen in state after state over the past decade.
Yeah, I mean, ending the statute of limitations is really critical because there should not be a time limit on justice for survivors. And we know how hard it is for survivors to come forward. There's so much shame and stigma around experiencing sexual violence. So it's critical that we let survivors seek justice on their own time.
And for you listening, just so you understand the difference, human trafficking is it's not moving people around. It's more of an enslavement of somebody for forced labor, sex trafficking. It's not just women, men and boys are almost equal, according to stats from the United Nations International Labor Organization, are almost equal as potential victims for human trafficking. What is it that's, because as you've said, you are with victims of trafficking. What is it the person listening right now needs to better understand? I mean, we get into the politics, and the more we get back and forth in politics on this issue, it takes the attention away from the victims. What does someone need to really understand about a victim of trafficking?
Yeah, that's a critical question, Chris, because what we need to understand is the federal definition of sex trafficking in the United States is the use of force, fraud, and coercion to get someone to engage in a commercial sex act. And, you know, it's easy for us or the public to imagine what force or fraud can look like, right? We think about, for force, someone being physically forced to do something. Maybe their hands are tied or they're locked in a room, right? This is actually not the most common way that sex trafficking is perpetrated. Usually what we're seeing is someone is trafficked through coercion, right? And coercion is something that's really hard to picture, to understand, and to grasp with, right? So what it often looks like is grooming. In the case of, for the Epstein and Maxwell victims, right, we're talking about the grooming often of children, of minors, right, who are purposely sought after by traffickers and sex buyers because they're easier to manipulate. They're just younger. And also the psychological manipulation that goes into trafficking someone. We have heard survivor of Epstein, Danny Bensky, say that when she was first introduced to Epstein, her mom had a brain tumor, and Epstein told her, I have access to the best doctors, I can get her the treatment that she needs. And then once time went on and Danny complied with what he was compelling her to do, he was able to use that as a threat against her. You know, I have access to all of these medical officials, right? I can decide whether or not your mom gets the treatment that she needs. And we've heard from many survivors that Epstein would constantly flaunt his connections to powerful people, purposefully to make them scared to speak out.
Wow, that's but thankfully, and in spite of the reactions we saw with Pam Bondi and others in the Trump administration and their supporters as well, who want to deny that the victims have a just cause, it's through the work of your organization, Dahlia, and you do have the 2026 World Without Exploitation Conference coming up in D.C. June 7th through the 9th. Again, everything that can be done to raise awareness of the issue is the strongest way to get a solution to the issue. There's human trafficking in every single state. Again, the person listening might be thinking, "Oh, human trafficking, that's the stuff that happens over in the Philippines or in Asia or over there." No, it's wherever you are listening right now on radio, on the podcast. It is where you are. Every single state in America, hundreds of victims minimum every single month. And what World Without Exploitation does, when you go to their website, you'll see this. They have the information, the facts, the reality. They have outlets for people who are trapped in this darkness to see that there is escape, and they're deserving of a life that they can call their own with strength and pride, happiness and joy, and a way to get back to that. And any way that you can help as someone with a heart who cares about victims of human trafficking, you can find outlets there as well where you can answer and respond in that way. Your starting point, worldwithoutexploitation.org, and she is their policy and education manager with World Without Exploitation, Dahlia Edidin Locke. Thanks so much for helping us understand and appreciate the victims in all this, because that's what they need to know, that there are people there with them. They're not alone. You're standing with them, and I think when your word comes out, more people stand with those victims as well. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Chris.
While we quickly and easily recognize how the cold weather hits us, that's not always true when we think about our pets, is it? Do you think that pets maybe can naturally adapt when it's cold like it's been now? If you have a large dog, for example, does that make you believe they can withstand the cold? Are you aware of the things that we take as normal, which can prove to be dangerous, even deadly to pets? My next guest joins us to bring you the information you need to be a responsible pet owner. She's a practicing integrative veterinarian, founder and director of the Chagrin Falls Veterinary Center and Pet Clinic, author of the books Naturally Healthy Dogs, Naturally Healthy Cats. Shows she's fair and no bias, as well as she is the developer of the Pet Anti-Aging Wellness System for Dogs and Cats. Dr. Carol Osborne, how are you today, Doctor?
Well, indeed, Chris. Thank you for having me.
And we have two websites, drcarol.com and chagrinfallspetclinic.com. We do have those at our homepage as well. It is a big mistake that people make the assumption, Doctor, that, well, the pets have fur, they have a bigger body mass and proportion and everything, so they can do fine in the cold. All animals can adjust to all weather. Well, that might be true for lizards, but not for dogs and cats, right?
Absolutely. If it's too cold out for you, chances are it's too cold outside for your pet, and you need to make amends accordingly.
This is why many states, not all, unfortunately, but quite a vast majority have, for example, tethering laws. There's a limited amount of time you can keep a dog tied outside for whatever reason. You want to put a dog outside in weather like this, but I guess a little fresh air for a half hour is usually the limit that state laws allowed. And by the way, if you missed that segment a couple of weeks ago, serious penalties if you violate those laws, at least here in New Jersey and hopefully other places. But as far as diet, normally for a human, we think, oh, I'm cold, I need some soup. Or get a little more adult beverage, maybe a hot toddy as you get done with the day at work. But for pets, how do we deal? What kind of diet alterations, changes, additions, or subtractions should we make to give them a little more endurance in this weather?
Yeah, you have to remember when it's cold outside, you have to eat a little bit more, so you got some extra calories that you can use to make energy, so it can help your pet stay warm. And if you decide to home cook for your pet, it's a healthy, cost-effective way to make sure your pet's getting the essential nutrients that he or she needs. So equal portions of a lean protein, chicken, turkey, beef, veal, duck, for example, long-acting carbs, oatmeal, potatoes, pasta, rice, or quinoa, for example. and your last third would be fresh veggies. I always put the cruciferous on top, broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts, but green beans, string beans, kale, cabbage, and spinach would all fall into that category. You can cook it up any way you like, mix it together, and I think your dog would be absolutely delighted. If you got a pudgy pet, just cut out the carbs, make it 50-50, lean proteins and veggies, and you can season it up. A little what we call tamari, low-sodium tamari sauce, a little pasta sauce, or even barbecue sauce. Most pets love one of those.
Never mind the dog. I'm coming over for dinner tonight. Now, how about frostbite? It's so infrequent with humans unless you're outside a utility worker, firefighter, police officer, crossing guard, something like that. So
Sure.
Frostbite is certainly something you're well aware of, but that's not all of us. So it's very likely we're not going to see it in our dogs or cats when it happens. What are we to look for, and how should we respond?
Well, the big areas at risk for frostbite is going to be your pet's ears, the nose, the tip of the tail, and the ears. A frostbitten area of skin initially turns a reddish color, and then it turns gray. And if you suspect that, bring him inside where it's warm. You could give your pet a warm bath, wrap him up in some towels. Never rub a suspected area of frostbite because that would make it worse. Wrap them up in towels, give them something warm to drink, maybe a little chicken noodle soup. Give your vet a call just to be sure. But most pets recover and will be just fine.
Dr. Carol Osborne, who is the founder director of the Chagrin Falls Veterinary Center and Pet Clinic. She practices integrative veterinarian medicine, author of Naturally Healthy Dogs, Naturally Healthy Cats, and developer of the Pet Anti-Aging Wellness System, drcarol.com, chagrinfallspetclinic.com, and you're listening to Issues and Ideas. Mentioned back in the intro that things we do normally, just totally automatic pilot, can be in danger for animals. Let's talk about the ice melt that we put on the ground, because there is that special type that is pet safe, they say. First of all, is that really pet safe?
The truth is, no matter what you use, pet safety, icing chemicals, rock salt, they're all irritating. So bring your pet inside, rinse the feet off or spritz them off with some warm water, and, pat them so they're dry. If your pet licks the feet with the chemicals on it, they drool, it can cause vomiting. You got to take care of your pet's paws because they get very cold. They make great booties out there, but unfortunately, most pets don't like them. Every now and then a pet will accept them, but rinse them off, and dry them off. I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to your pet's paws.
And when it comes to our vehicles, whether it's in the driveway or in the garage, the cold weather makes things start leaking out of our cars that we don't want to have leak out of the cars, and we don't want to spend money for it, but we have to watch out for that because a lot of what leaks out of the car, just as it would be toxic for a child or even an adult, is going to be toxic for our pets.
And if you're changing your radiator fluid or whatever, remember, antifreeze it's deadly. It just takes a teaspoon, which actually is fatal for dogs and cats. So if you got a spill or a leak, clean it up, store your containers high up, in a locked, secure cabinet. And should you think that your pet did consume antifreeze, that is one of the few true life and death emergencies. Grab your pet, jump in the car, and go to the nearest ER or veterinarian 123. It's within a couple of hours, it's basically uniformly fatal. So be careful with that.
That's always why you should always have, much like you have a regular physician for yourself or your child, have a regular veterinarian, or at least know where an emergency vet care center is, because there's a lot more of those springing up, I've noticed too, which is a good thing, because if something were to happen on a Sunday night, for example, well, you're options for relief and saving your pet are quite limited in those off times.
Yeah, I tell people, get the number of a local petty yard, put it on the refrigerator, or just in a place where everybody in the house knows where it is, just in case.
Talk about your pet anti-aging wellness system, because I was blessed to have a cat for 22 years. It was an indoor cat, which normally they will live substantially longer than a cat that spends most of its time outside, but Norton really beat the odds going to 22, which I was happy about. But to have an animal with you as long as possible, you have to treat it every way possible, and that includes feeding.
Sure. I think most important considerations for dogs and cats, a nice, healthy, organic diet. Always feed your pet at least twice a day. Keep your pets lean. Those extra pounds are not adding any extra years. Get them outside for at least 20 minutes a couple times a day, so they have regular exercise. Make sure you keep the skin and hair coat in good order, whether that's at home or visiting a groomer at regular intervals, and visit your vet once a year at minimum. If you have an older pet, age 7 and up, twice a year, every 6 months is a good idea. You have to remember pets age twice as quickly as we do, so things can seem like they happened overnight. And visiting your vet is a great insurance level to help you keep your pet healthy. Minimize vaccines. Minimize unnecessary chemicals and pesticides. We run a lot of titers, which little blood test that validates whether a pet is protected on the inside for distemper, parvo, hepatitis, and rabies. So you don't have to keep giving your pets, all those extra vaccines and chemicals that in many cases are not actually needed. And something else I'll mention, Chris, when it comes to cats, there's all kinds of cats outside, especially in this weather. So if you have a car that's outside, even if it's in the garage, it's a good idea to bang on the hood a couple times and honk the horn in case a kitty's curled up in that engine, keeping warm.
Oh, yeah, and you mentioned, too, that they eat more during the cold weather. I have a little setup outside for the feral cats, they call them. It's a little more dignified than stray cats, I guess. And I've noticed, too, that that food's disappearing a lot faster these days, Doctor. But I'm glad I can help them out. And I know they would not like to be brought inside. It's just not their nature at this point, and they're not really trusting of humans, but they'll gladly be fed by humans. I've noticed that.
Yeah, cats are pretty clever, so they find all kinds of places to curl up in and keep warm. And the fact that the food is disappearing is proof to the pudding. And, a lot of people have rat and mouse baits at this time of the year. Again, Chris, you want to keep those in areas inaccessible to your pets. A lot of them are baited with peanut butter, so they smell good and they taste pretty good too.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a good thing to watch out for.
Again, it's really just pay attention to your pet. If you see a change in their behavior or in their eating, then that might be a time to check in or take a trip to your veterinarian. Find out more about the work of Dr. Carol Osborne and what she makes available and awareness and help to have a healthy and happy pet, drcarol.com. And if you're in her neck of the woods, ChagrinFallsPetClinic.com for her professional website. Dr. Carol Osborne, thank you so much for some great advice today.
Well, Chris, thanks for having me.
This past week, the FDA refused to review a submission made by pharmaceutical company Moderna for approval. No, it wasn't for some revolutionary new treatment. Nope, not for a treatment for a rare illness. FDA refused to review a submission by Moderna of their flu vaccine. Of course, we know that DHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a devout anti-vaxxer and has filled the health agencies he oversees with like-minded people. Joining us to explore why this happened, what the implications are, and whether this may be another sign of what's to come regarding health care is Senior Medical Advisor with the Wellness Equity Alliance, Dr. Ben Young. How are you today, Doctor?
Oh, very good. Thanks for the chance to chat with you.
And we'll learn more about the Wellness Equity Alliance, their website, wellnessequityalliance.com. We do have that link at our homepage, and valuable information and guidance and ways that you can get involved as well, too, in some of their important work. Let us review, because I think we all know, for everyone listening, what a vaccine is. But this is a specific type of vaccine. Explain what mRNA vaccines are all about.
Well, first off, I think it's probably worth noting what mRNA is. And so mRNA is messenger RNA, and it's one of the essential parts of genetic information transactions in all of our cells, in every person, plant, dog, bacteria, etc. And what has happened in the last several years, first example of that was the COVID mRNA vaccines, was to utilize this new technology to very rapidly design and deliver vaccines. What is novel about the technology has been around for a long time, waiting in a sense for the right application, the right setting to deploy. And COVID-19 was that case, and now tens, if not hundreds of millions of vaccinations using mRNA technologies have been administered around the world with very well-characterized safety and efficacy profiles. But, of course, the vaccine technology and mRNA technology didn't stop with COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. Companies have been exploiting this technology to do very rapidly what usually took years to develop, using purified proteins from cells and such. So it enables drug companies to very rapidly develop new vaccines to new and emerging targets. It also allows something very important and different, is that it also allows the companies to develop multi-targeted vaccines, literally with a tap of a keyboard. And so for things that are rapidly evolving, like many viruses, it's actually an ideal technology platform for developing that.
So what you said with everything regarding mRNA and the fact that the flu virus, as is with any virus, it mutates, and the purpose and the goal of vaccine research is to determine to come up with the most effective vaccine for that year's flu season. If the production is faster, then you can start later and do more research to wind up, in theory at least, with a more effective vaccine for the flu.
Absolutely. It allows the companies to identify the candidate proteins, much sooner to the time of deployment. And again, typically, the Old Testament version of this is that organizations like the World Health Organization and the CDC would try to have sentinel surveillance of the early cases of influenza emerging typically in Southeast Asia, and then try to extrapolate what might happen in the flu epidemic in the United States 6 or 10 months later. So it was a bit of a calculated gamble in terms of the selection of the target virus, and the faster that you can adapt the methodology to develop those vaccines, the better, because then the closer the targets will be to the viruses that are circulating when flu season arrives.
Now, the problem with Moderna and what they came through, and by the way, just a point of reference, for a refusal like this to review a submission happens at best 4% of the time out of the thousands of requests that the FDA, the CDC receives. And we have a he said, she said type of situation, Doctor. We have Moderna saying, well, back in 2024, we laid out what we were going to do with the placebo test, which was mandated by RFK Jr. when he came on board. And they said, okay, that's fine, the vaccine you're going to use. We're looking at seniors specifically. But now the FDA is saying, no, we don't like what you did. You put the seniors at risk, they're basically saying, paraphrasing the FDA's response here, in what Moderna chose to do. And the FDA also wants drug companies to say, if people in a target test are getting placebos or not. And the FDA is indirectly accusing Moderna of doing that, of falling short on that as well. It just seems like only because we have an increasing number of anti-vaxxers within FDA, CDC, and the various other agencies under the FDA's umbrella, and DHS's umbrella, rather, just calls into question, I think, for a lot of people, is that view of vaccines by the few starting to spread out and impact the many?
Well, yes. I mean, I think you described, I think the key issue here, actually, to me, is, it's important to talk about vaccine technologies and opportunities for innovation that might actually, improve vaccine safety and efficacy. But I think the core issue is the rejection of the application. So it didn't, and you're right that it's extremely unusual for a submission to be rejected without review. I worked in big pharma for 5 or 6 years and was involved in the design of clinical trials and the regulatory process. The laborious and detailed regulatory process in the design and then subsequently the submission of all of that data. Those are bilateral discussions between the discovery companies and the regulatory agencies, the FDA. And the reason that that's important is, for example, this clinical trial was one of tens of thousands of individuals, and they are enormously expensive to conduct. And so simply from a discovery, innovation, and investment perspective, you don't want the goalposts moving after the study has been fully recruited and the data is being analyzed. That's bad for innovation. It's bad for investors. It's bad for companies. And ultimately, it's bad for drug discovery and new medicines, not just for mRNA vaccines, but across the industry.
And this has been a similar action that the current DHS has taken with one company that had a melanoma drug, another one that had a cell therapy process for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is ironic because the same DHS has now installed an order to have newborns screened for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which that hadn't been done before. And I mean, that's a positive step. I'll say when someone is right, and certainly applaud them for that. But with mRNA-based vaccines, Doctor, it seems like there's people among not just the anti-vax side of things, but people have questions about them. Is there a concern that because of the speed of manufacturing, it lowers the efficacy of these vaccines?
Well, first off, I think there has been a ton of misinformation in recent years regarding public health, regarding medicines and vaccines. And mRNA falls very squarely into that topic. I actually did my PhD work long time ago on RNA technologies, and we've been trying to develop these for a long time. And it was just, again, the culmination of the right chemistry and the right disease for this to actually be brought up to scale. My aim here is not to necessarily point fingers as to what the cause is, but there's certainly, widespread mistrust of systems, but systems that rely on evidence-informed peer review and data grading systems, and those seem to be have been tossed up in the air in recent months. And that's bad for everybody. And it's unfortunate because in the end, what will happen, mRNA technologies will continue to be developed, and they are, as we speak, overseas. There've been very successful mRNA programs, therapeutic mRNA programs in China. There was a putative cure, or at least the first treatment for Huntington's disease using mRNA technologies that went through clinical trials in the UK. And what will happen is that Americans will be left behind. Other countries, the people in other countries will benefit from these things, and suddenly the United States will not be a place where people can get the best and newest medicines, especially for rare diseases, and so on. So it's really important to understand that that the culture of chaos, the culture of uncertainty is bad for innovation, both for companies and for patients.
And certainly, it's in spite of all this, for you listening, it's important to get your flu vaccine if you haven't yet. And the flu season could extend because weather plays a role in things like that, too, as well as your personal lifestyle. So no matter what the doubters say, get your flu vaccine. And by the way, and certainly down in the South, too, measles vaccines would not be a bad idea as well in light of the surge we're continuing to see, especially in the South, about that. And keep an eye out, too, because it just seems like we're seeing the start of potentially people who don't agree with something in science are in positions to change the rules of how that science is brought to you who need the results of that science. So keep an eye out on that, and also find out more about the Wellness Equity Alliance, because they bring about attention to a proper cause when it comes to health care to make sure that everyone has access to the best that they could possibly have and certainly need. WellnessEquityAlliance.com is their website, and he is their senior medical advisor, Dr. Ben Young. Doctor, thank you for helping us better understand what we're seeing unfold, because it comes so fast sometimes that it goes past us before we can understand. Thanks for being here today.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on the program.
Well, I think that the president is, especially as this second term is coming around, the president is very much spiritual. Spiritual is a personal relationship with God, meaning that he is in tune to the voice of God. He knows that those 2-time assassination attempts was not a coincidence nor an accident, that the hand of God through the Lord Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit guided thwarted those assassination attempts that was designed to kill him in the natural. And as I said to the president, right after that happened, that no weapon formed against you will prosper.
And we break the power. We break the power of the homosexual, lesbian spirits that are trying to ruin our children and ruin this nation. Get down from there. Amen. We sit by the throne. You are under our feet.
To say no to President Trump would be saying no to God.
I declare that President Trump will overcome every strategy from hell and every strategy of the enemy.
It is God that raises up a king. It is God that sets one down. And so when you fight against the plan of God, you're fighting against the hand of God.
I'm to the place right now, if you vote Democrat, I don't even want you around this church. You can get out. You can get out, you demon. You can get out, you baby butchering election thief. You cannot be a Christian and vote Democrat in this nation. I don't care how mad that makes you. You get pissed off as you want to. You cannot be a Christian and vote Democrat in this nation. They are God-denying demons that butcher babies and hate this nation. They hate this nation. Get mad all you want to. I don't care if you stand. I don't care if you throw tomatoes, praise God. I'm about to throw a microphone up in his house. CNN can eat my dirty socks. You cannot be a Democrat and a Christian. You cannot. Somebody say amen. The rest of you, get out. Get out. Get out in the name of Jesus. I ain't playing your stupid games.
Colorful, aren't they? Those were the voices in order of appearance of Pastors Mark Burns, Kenneth Copeland, Paula White, and Greg Locke, all speaking from their respective pulpits. What do those four have in common? They are evangelicals, and, well, there are many more exactly like them who have been and continue to be devoted supporters of Donald Trump. These are the individuals, with again many more exactly like them, who have proclaimed Donald Trump to be a man of God even. And I selected those four to share with you because collectively they present the full spectrum of how Trump-supporting pastors use their pulpit for their purpose, which, of course, is to praise and even idolize Donald Trump. Are these people speaking with any heavenly authority? Well, not according to Jesus, who in John chapter 8, verse 29 says this, "And he who sent me is with me. The Father has not left me alone, for I always do those things that please him." The main course of action for these individuals is to fit God's word to a specific person, which is the complete opposite of what the Bible instructs us to do. Jesus in Matthew chapter 15, verses 8 and 9 reveals exactly who these people are. These people draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, and in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. The Word of God is not, and I repeat, is not supposed to fit a person. It's the person who needs to fit the Word of God. Let's go to Joshua chapter 1, verse 8. This is where God instructs Joshua, "This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it, for then you will make yourself prosperous, and then you will have good success." We have James adding to that wisdom in James chapter 1, verses 22 through 25. "But be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does." You heard rather blatantly in that audio I started with how there are many in the pulpit who seek to divide. That, of course, is not what the church is designed to allow or encourage. Paul tells us this in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 12 through 14. "For as the body is one and has many members, but all members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and have all been made to drink into one Spirit. For in fact the body is not one member, but many." These pastors even use prayer for their purposes, which brings about a question. If they're behaving ungodly, as well as teaching ungodly, will God respond to their prayers? Answer to that is found in John chapter 9, verse 31. "Now we know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears him." So why am I bringing attention to the pastors I highlighted at the beginning of this teaching? It's to help you understand that just because they have a lofty platform, even fame, their ungodly acts aren't exclusive to the level that they exist on. An ungodly pastor can just as easily exist in a small-town church as he or she can in a major city megachurch. If something doesn't make sense or feel right at the church you're attending, determine whether that person speaking from the pulpit reflects what we read in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 3 through 5. "If anyone teaches otherwise and does not consent to wholesome words, even the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, into the doctrine which accords with godliness, he is proud, knowing nothing, but is obsessed with disputes and arguments over words, from which come envy, strife, reviling, evil suspicions, useless wrangling of men of corrupt minds and destitute of the truth, who suppose that godliness is a means of gain. From such withdraw yourselves." John in 1 John chapter 4, verse 1 actually makes this the righteous thing to do on your part. Reading here, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." We as followers in faith of Jesus have the light of God within us. And obviously, these troubling times that we're in, that light will bring us through what we're watching unfold. And Paul in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 3 and 4, foretold, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will hear up for themselves teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables." Be sure to check out our website, issuesandideasradio.com. That's where we have more information about the guest who joined us here on the show today. And if you're listening via one of the many podcast platforms we're on, make sure you subscribe as well. Always grateful and thankful for your time and attention. Look forward to being with you right here this time next week for our next edition of Issues and Ideas.